Welcome to Swimming with Allocators,
the VC podcast from the LP perspective,
with your hosts, Alexa Benz
and Ernest Sweat. You ready? Let's dive in.
A big welcome to our guest, Sarah Samuels, partner at NEPC. Sarah oversees 400 clients and allocating over $1.7 trillion across venture, growth, equity, buyout, real estate, energy, hedge funds, public equities, and fixed income. She's been recognized as one of the most influential women in investment management for 2024 by Institutional Investor and as an influential woman in institutional investing by Pensions and Investments for 2023. We're so thrilled to have you. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
We got a little bit of background on what inspired you from your first job as an assistant to start crawling up the ranks. Can you start by sharing your journey to NEPC?
Absolutely. So I joined NEPC as a partner about 6 years ago now. And before that, as I mentioned, I started as an administrative assistant at Wellington, fell in love with the industry, and became a client-facing analyst, working with all sorts of institutional clients. I knew I wanted to manage money myself, so I went to an RIA with a quant shop, background with a quant model, and I learned how to trade. I learned how to build portfolios. I learned how to build quant models. It was too short-term focused for me, so I moved on to the LP seat, and I spent 6 years at MassPrim, which is the large state pension fund here in Massachusetts, ending as deputy CIO, overseeing all the investments. And then I moved on to Wellesley College. I wanted to sort of work with a smaller pool of capital and have a more venture-heavy program to work with. So during my time at MassPrim, I was a client of NEPC's for 6 years. And I like to say you should read into the fact that I came over here. I knew the firm really well. They asked me if I'd think about joining and taking a fresh look at our investment approach. And here we are today.
That's awesome. In our prep call, you mentioned just kind of that spark and what led you to go on this journey. Could you share that with our audience and what was the initial spark?
Absolutely. So I had no idea this industry existed. It wasn't on my radar. I was studying abroad in Austria my senior year. I was a German major. I got home in June of my senior year, having graduated, had never had an internship, never done anything besides wait tables. Wow. And so I looked on Indeed or whatever it was, monster.com at the time. And I said, this looks like there are a lot of jobs in finance. Maybe this would be fun. I didn't know how much I'd fall in love with it. But from the admin seat, I didn't have a ton of opportunity to actually get my hands dirty. I loved how the macro tied to the numbers. I loved how the missions of these organizations was very applicable and relatable for me. For example, that one organization, the corporate pension fund that my dad was in, was one of our clients, and I got to work on that performance report. So I very quickly saw how important this ecosystem is to everybody really out there when you think about it. So I asked for stretch projects. I had a pretty major aha moment when I saw a partner at Wellington who was young, and she was commanding the room. She picked healthcare stocks, and I said, "Who is this person?" And they said, "Well, that's Jean Hines," and she started as an admin. And then I said, "Wow, I didn't think I could possibly do something more than what I'm doing now, because no one else in my tribe has done that. And I believe we're tribe-driven people." And she didn't know it, but she became part of my tribe. And so I got my CFA, I got my Kaya, and I went back to grad school for an MBA and asked for stretch projects, and it worked.
Wow, that's super inspiring. And it just shows proof of a couple things. One, how seeing can help to believing, right? You saw another woman commanding, and then just so happened she had the same kind of foundational background as yours. That's inspiring. Yes. And then also connecting kind of past tribe to new tribe, I'm assuming, right? So in your story, talking about the pension fund, one of my kind of reasons in connecting an interest in venture, of all of the things I love analyzing, I love meeting with companies, but seeing that such a strong amount of the capital going to support this asset class is coming from people that benefit my parents who were state workers and state employees, that's powerful and just makes you want to drive even more to do well.
That's right. And I think that this point is very easily lost when we're thinking about what our industry is. We get really wrapped up in creating returns and is there DPI and all of these matters. And at the end of the day, what we do is really, really critical to making the world go around. And so I do like to, whenever I can, in any situation, whether it's a speaking engagement or meeting with GPs and LPs, remind people of the purpose of our capital. So to your point, it helps retirees live comfortably. So my dad was in a corporate pension. My mom was in the state pension system, which I actually ended up managing at
That's
Mass
so
Prim
cool.
from my mom. And I was like, rest assured, your portfolio is in great shape. I went to these pools of capital are sending first generation kids to college. So I went to University of New Hampshire with a lot of help from the endowment supporting my tuition. They are helping hospital systems care for the sick, and they're funding innovation, as probably we're going to talk about today. So this is really, really important to remember that without this capital and good stewards of it, we'd be in a world of hurt.
And I love your anecdote too, that you were able to sort of get to know NEPC based on having been a client.
Right.
Were there any other lessons learned from the time at Mass Prim that are informing your private market strategy or your venture strategy in particular?
Oh, that's such a good question. So interestingly, a public pension and an endowment, you might not think that they have much in common, but they're both really, really return seeking. And so they're both putting on meaningful amounts of risk. There are some major differences. There's size, there's check sizes, there's governance and all of that. But at the end of the day, the return expectation is somewhere around 7.5%, 8% nominal. And we need private markets to get there. We can't get there with public markets alone. So private markets are really important for both of those. But I got some really, really good advice from my friend Kim Liu, who has been a CIO for a long time at different organizations. She's kind of legendary in our industry. And she gave me this advice about 15 years ago. And she said, the place where 99 out of 100 investors, GPs and LPs alike, where they fall flat is being able to articulate their investment philosophy. And she said, this is during my time at the pension fund, and I hadn't quite nailed it down yet. I was still learning. And she said, you could be the smartest person in the room, but if you can't articulate your investment philosophy succinctly and clearly and in a thoughtful way, you're not going to go very far. And so I took that to heart, and I spent a long time figuring out what it is that I believe in. And so when I bring this up a lot to people today and sort of challenge them to articulate their investment philosophy, and she was exactly right. They go down rabbit holes. They go on for 5 minutes. They can't really, remember the point they were trying to make. And so I'll just give you an example, or I'll lead by example and share my overall investment philosophy.
Yes, please do.
And this is true across public and public pension fund and an endowment and any other return-seeking type of LP. So my investment philosophy is 4 things. It is, I believe in having an equity bias. That's the first. The second is paired with thoughtful portfolio construction and diversifiers. So if a portfolio is a perennial garden, in any given season, we want something to be in bloom. The third is that I believe in locking up our capital in private markets when we're getting paid for it. We need to prove ourselves we're getting paid for it. And then the fourth thing I believe in is really, really strong manager selection and partnerships with GPs. So those are the 4 things I believe in. And then I have sort of different philosophies by different strategy types. So that was a huge learning from my time at the public pension and today.
And are there any examples of sort of where that came from, like the importance of manager selection? I know Wellesley's fantastic at this. Are any stories you can share on where you kind of learned that lesson or why it's become part of your philosophy?
So I'm a big believer in frameworks, and I basically have a framework for any decision that I need to make because I've done a lot of research in investment bias. And investment bias, I don't think there's much more out there that's more ripe for potential bias than investing. We still have caveman brains, actually, and our DNA hasn't evolved. It takes about 1 million years. And so the way that we often react to issues and challenges is emotional. It's our first reaction. And that's going to help us if we have a saber-toothed tiger coming at us or a pterodactyl flying through our window. It makes for terrible investment decisions. So these frameworks help to slow things down. And that's why I have so many frameworks, so that we can be consistent and not be whipsawed by emotions. So my framework for having an equity bias is that in most economic regimes, growth and inflationary over time, we've been in a growth environment about 60% of the time, and equities are the best investment to be in a growth environment. And then the rest of the time, there are some other periods when equities do well as well. And so when we want to match our portfolio construction with when things are going to do best, that's sort of the framework there. The locking up of capital, this is really a CIO mindset. So it takes a long time to build a CIO mindset, to be able to think across asset classes and think cross-sectionally about opportunity costs and where we want to put our capital. But we need tools to make sure that we're getting paid to lock it up. Because as a CIO, if I'm going to invest in venture capital and I could get the same return and the same exposure in a more liquid and a cheaper way, I'm going to do the more liquid and cheap way every time. Like the bar needs to be high. So these are anything from public market equivalents to understanding the different value creation levers. So that's the locking up of capital, getting paid for it. Then manager selection, the framework is that we look at the spread of distribution of outcomes within a universe. In the public markets, it's going to be like 2, 3, 4% difference between the best and the worst managers. And in venture, it's 50%. So manager selection matters a lot. You could really crush it, or you can really get hurt.
I love this. This is like a master class for all of our emerging allocators who are in our audience as well. So thank you for sharing that. I love also it's kind of like the expectations you put on the fund managers of like, we always hear, what's your differentiation? What's your philosophy? What's an Earnest deal? What's an Alexa deal, right? And being clear about that, but hearing it from like, we have expectations of ourselves as well. And we're not just following what every other endowment does or every other foundation or pension plan does. That speaks volumes. The question I have though, with all the frameworks, there's a risk of becoming stale, right? And so where there's a letter of the law, I'm sorry, I'm a pastor's kid. So there's a letter of the law, and then you have to balance it with like, actually, what's the actual spirit of the law? How do you do you have a framework for making sure you do that?
Yes, absolutely. So the first thing is we don't rely on reversion to the mean anywhere in our frameworks. And that's a huge, huge issue when you have any framework that relies on something reverting, because the world is always changing.
Yeah.
And you can't say that like this is the right multiple because that's where it was 15 years ago. So we need to be more flexible and think about what's changed in our world. And then the other is that we have an investment framework to select managers. Shocker. And it's upwards of 400 questions, which sounds really daunting, but it has a lot of benefits, including memorializing our decisions and why we made them. So there's no revisionist history in the future. It includes deciding what is important to us in a cold state as opposed to a hot, agitated state, unpacking signal from noise, gives transparency across the team so that we can challenge one another and have more robust discussions. But there are 5 like broad categories, and 4 of them would not seem like that unique or interesting to you. There are going to be things like people and firm and performance and things like that. The largest weight in our model is something we call analyst opinion. And this is where I want people to be able to reflect, to number one, toggle the rating that we have of a manager depending on their sentiment. And number 2, have a place for things that can't be captured in a model. So this could be your spidey sense. Like if something just feels really, really off and you can't fit it into these questions, into the letter of the law, but you know the spirit of the experience was not good, you can express that there. Or if you want to take a flyer, if you want to say, hey, I can't point directly to specific deal level attribution or track record or anything like that, but I believe in this person because I've used the mosaic approach and that things, the way that they've done things really works for me, then we can have a sort of positive sentiment mover in the other direction. And it's a living, breathing thing. So we do adjust it over time.
Is that ends up basically being as opposed to reversion to the mean, if the analyst is really has a sort of icky or uncomfortable feeling, there's some people are really peeved by name dropping, or they always use the term I instead of we. Some of these things would potentially then just knock a manager out of consideration. How sensitive is that model where, it's like, actually, I don't think we want to, we can't in good faith recommend this human to our clients, versus like, oh, on paper, they're really great, but there's just something we're not on the same page with. Like, the personality is a little rough.
Yeah. So I think the first thing is to remember that nobody's making any decisions in a vacuum. Yeah. So this is definitely a team-based approach. We have 3 stages: your underwriting process, and the team is going to be pretty, everyone basically kind of needs to agree. So nobody's going to be kicking out a manager because of personality. Sometimes the most charming and charismatic managers may not be the best at creating value, and vice versa.
100%.
And then it's not the type, it doesn't have a big enough weight that it can drastically change the outcome, but it will toggle it.
Yep. Yeah. We've had Alex Edelman, who's got a fund of funds on, who was like, I like the weirdos. Everybody's got sort of a preference for different personality types.
That's actually my mantra in life. Like, I love weird people. I love it. But the types of things that we are asking about in our framework and in our model, I won't go through all of them, of course, but we're asking managers about their investment edge and if it's sustainable. Yeah. So investment edge is sort of similar to an investment philosophy, except I think an edge necessarily is a little bit more fleeting. Like, it can be arbitraged away. If it exists, there's a lot of capital and a lot of smart people. So when will it stop working? And we want to make sure they're thinking that way. We ask about succession. This is like, this could be a whole different podcast. In fact, I did do a podcast on succession with capital allocators this summer. So this isn't just about VC founders stepping down, because obviously an emerging manager in their 40s, we're not going to ask them to have a succession plan, but it's also about that next generation and retaining them at the GP so that they are motivated and they have room to grow. It's about scaling properly so that if you are growing funds 2, 3, and 4, that you're not just handling more and more work yourself as the founder. You need someone else who you've trained. And then it's also about replacing founders at portfolio companies, because, research shows that about half of founders are replaced by the time their company reaches the 3rd round of financing, and about 3/4 are replaced by the time a company is successful enough to go public. My coach, Sloan Klein, always tells me, what got you here won't get you there. Yeah. And so there is often a lot of sort of succession work that needs to be done.
Now we're going to take a quick break to speak with our sponsor.
On the show today, we have a friend and industry expert, Nick Talwar, fractional CTO for both VCs and their portcos. His agency, Bottega 8, trains custom AI models for financial institutions like yours. Welcome, Nick. Many of the folks listening are VCs. They're fundraising or operationalizing and institutionalizing their firms. How do you help VC funds?
There are 3 main ways we help VC funds. We help them operationalize their fund thesis with AI. That's number 1. Everything from thought leadership, content creation using AI, and distribution AI pipelines, to pitch analysis. And then through our fractional CTO work, that's the second sort of way we help VCs. That's really about the portcos. We help portcos navigate tough transitions, act as a resource to help portco execs pivot and drive efficiencies with AI, or we use AI-first methods to explore like new greenfield options for the company to meet the next set of market demands or meet their next like fundraising milestone. And a lot of companies are struggling in this AI landscape, and I think it's really important for us to just have an open conversation as much as we can about that it's okay. It's okay. Everyone's dealing with this. Like, everyone's dealing with this weird freight train bearing down on us. So let's just kind of roll up our sleeves and work together with you. And we basically have some great results of turning companies around and making sure that they become profitable, or they have the right technology stack and product design, like platform product design, for the next set of AI opportunities.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense, that once you've made your bets, you need to really help those individual portcos be successful. And this is a massive opportunity to become more CapEx efficient, et cetera, where when capital is on short supply, you need Nick.
That's a
Can
great
you
that's a great tagline. I should steal it. When capital is in short supply, call Nick.
Exactly. Can you share any funds that you're working with today?
Short answer is no. Pretty much all the work we do is highly sensitive and competitive, unfortunately. For example, oftentimes we are hired by and deployed by the board of a portco for various reasons, and so I can't really answer that. But on a one-to-one chat, maybe I can elaborate further, of course.
No, of course.
Yeah.
I think we all know we should be implementing AI into our firms, but where do you see the most impact? Where should VCs be focusing?
Operations. Like, we all know that many VC firms could benefit from more organization, some focused process, and just a little even. And it's always been hard to do because of the lack of a product or engineering team. AI can fast track you in big ways, right? In the past, we would have to build an entire technical architecture to get an output or a business outcome. Now AI kind of flips the script a little bit, and you can use AI first and then curate and design certain ways in which you can collate resources and train it or provide the right context such that it can actually supercharge your operational workflows and save you a lot of time.
Yeah.
But not only that, but bring breadth, because LLMs are trained on more, like, all of the information ever created on the internet. So it can today, in short, it can help you with automations and augment your workflows, and that will help you drive better decisions.
Thank you so much, Nick. If you are looking for help implementing AI at your fund or across your portfolio, you can please go to bottega8.com/swimming. That's BOTTEGA 8 as in the number .com/swimming. We appreciate you giving us the credit, so please use the URL. And now back to our LP interview.
I want to jump into NEPC soon, but because we've been talking about kind of like how you all think about fund managers, I'm curious, over these last, this bull run, I want to ask both of you this. It was a different market, right? And not only for founders, but for fund managers, and seeing like how funds were deploying, how fast. What do you think are some qualities, both of you, that we're missing that we need now in fund managers?
Alexa, do you want to go?
I think it's a healthy sense of competition, actually. That if your marks were all up and to the right, and you were able to close a bigger than ever fund, I think everybody started to sort of think of themselves as extra special. To recognize that was the market, that wasn't necessarily your skill or your exceptionality or something. So I think now you have to sort of recognize that you're one of many, and that's to the differentiation question becomes much more important. It's like, why were you seeing those markups? What was the strategy there? And to be able to point back to something that's actually unique to you.
I think that's right. I think the word of the day is discipline. And we did see some GPs that had discipline in 2022 and 21. Others have fully admitted that they got sucked into the momentum and the animal spirits, and they described it as being a frog in boiling water. That it happened really, really subtly and slowly, and before they knew it, they couldn't believe what they were paying. But to the point of, anyone under the age of 30, 36, 7, 8, hasn't lived through a market, like a full market crisis. We've had some blips here and there. But that is actually a huge disservice to these people, because there's this concept of stress wood, right? That trees without stress grow really fast and high, but they're
Wow.
super flimsy. They're going to get blown over and die sooner because they don't have the stress wood. Trees that have things thrown at them, hurled, wind, all sorts of like material and debris, they're going to grow slower, but they're going to be much more sustainable and stronger. And so I think that what we lack today is stress wood, and we're certainly not going to get there by experiencing it alone. We need actually mentors. We need the people who've been through cycles elbow to elbow with these younger GPs and LPs and investment committees, for that matter, saying, hey, here's how it's going to play. Here's how it's going to feel. Here's why I'm saying that we shouldn't be making this deal today, even though I know you're young and hungry, and I know you want to get paid, and I know your ego wants to say, like, I put this many dollars to work and this is my deal. This may not be the time. So it's really interesting. We went into this one GP in the fall of 22, and we were supposed to meet with a senior person, and we ended up meeting with a more junior person who wasn't trained in how to speak with us. And they opened the kimono and they just started talking about, the sort of relative dysfunction in the organization because they weren't doing deals. He's like, people are angry. But that organization in hindsight was exactly spot on, but they needed really good leadership along the way to bring those people along. The other story is that we've gone into, so we have to remember that underlying all of these investments is a public market return driver, right? And when you show up in a risky enterprise, you should be paid something for it. And so the idea that everything, all value that's created is because of one's golden touch or alpha, it's a pervasive idea. And it's not common that we see GPs who say, here's what we delivered over and above what the market did.
I'm so glad I asked that question, because those were some gems from both of you. And I just finished this book, Venture Mindset, which is essentially two Stanford professors talking about how to provide or how to execute the venture perspective in the corporate environment. And they speak about, like, the history of redwoods and sequoias, and how there's a lot of fires and they grow slowly, right? And so that just sticks with me. I think that's so important.
The number of VC funds that have tree names.
Yeah. I'm not going to say what she inspired me to think about. I do have a fund that I'm trying to think about a name, but I'm not going to share it right now.
I wanted to learn more about mentorship, sort of what advice you have, things that you've seen work for you. You've talked about how Jean Hines was this, you were able to hold her on a pedestal, but she also was willing to give you some actual tips and feedback. What are some things that younger folks in their career can do to manage up in terms of mentorship, or things that you've seen work really well for people that you've been helping along through their careers?
Yeah, such an important question. And, my philosophy on this topic is that I don't get to keep what I have unless I give it away. And that means any wisdom, and it also means my material things. So I want to die with nothing. So it's pretty easy to give away what you have and meet with people. And, there are a number of ways to do that. So one is to get involved in an organization you believe in, whether it's at your company or somewhere else. So that we have an actual mentorship program at NEPC where we meet with somebody new each month. And then if it's a good fit, it sticks. We have a DEI board, of which I'm a member. I've been involved with Girls Who Invest since the beginning. I'm a founder of PE Win in Boston, involved with Big PE Win. And I wrote a children's book to lift up those kids from underrepresented communities and try to make a dent in this 2% of capital that's managed by women and people of color by giving to kids education and role models. But then, it's really, if you want to make it a business decision, which it can be, you can look at this from a business perspective, it's absolutely good for the bottom line to share what you know and share what you have and to bring others up. And it makes your life a lot easier too, if you're surrounded by people who are capable and happy and competent.
To that end, well, first of all, you're doing a lot, and thank you for all that you're doing in the communities and in the industry. Um, we've had over these last 7 years more of a focus on the lack of diversity within our industry. Um, but as we hopefully we continue to progress, but there have been headlines on what's been pretty evident, what we're feeling of um, more zombie funds coming from underrepresented fund managers and female fund manager led funds. What do you think we can learn from that kind of 2018 to 2021 period, and what's the responsibility of the industry?
First is, if you've got find yourself working with an emerging manager or a manager that might be smaller in size or newer, to really make sure that you're partnering with them in a very close way and not just providing capital. So when I think about my friend Lisa Colley, who was a guest on your show, her firm does this, where they help them create sustainable business models. And this doesn't have to do with gender or race or ethnicity. It just has to do with being a newer fund. And then the other is to just be connected with those in your ecosystem. There's a lot of people to support one another and not to try to do it alone. At NEPC, we have like so many different areas of expertise, and we have this scale where we're putting about $500 million into venture each year.
Mm-hmm.
And we problem solve for our clients. And so we have a lot of clients who, this is where that idea of using our voice for good at NEPC is really important. So I thought I had a big voice at the state pension fund with $100 billion in assets. Now I really feel like we have a big voice in the ecosystem, 1.7 trillion. And there's a big responsibility that comes with that, right? So our voice and our recommendations matter. And sometimes I disturb people when I ask them the questions that I ask, and I'm fine with that. And I tell my team members, I want you to ask these questions about this organization. And this is more along the lines of lack of diversity at bigger or medium-sized organizations. There are a series of questions that I've given each member of my team, and I want them to ask. And I say, if you're uncomfortable asking this because of power dynamics or you're younger, just tell them I want to know. So they give them that reason often. But we really want to use this voice to lift that, to help our industry end up where we want to be, right? So we want more diverse ownership. We want more diverse funds. We want this to really match the world in which we live.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no reason that it shouldn't. So that there was another point I wanted to make. We have a specific rating platform that's dedicated to diverse owned strategies. We bring them through all the time through our regular platform as well, but this is called our Explorer rating platform. And this is so that we are very deliberate, and it's not a sort of side gig, or if we remember, we're very deliberate and have set goals for ourselves about bringing through a certain number of funds that are diverse owned or led. And that's been really well received. The clients that are making the most changes in their actual investment portfolio to reflect their beliefs about how the world should be are community foundations. Mm. They're the ones who say, this is what our underlying community looks like. So we have, one client example where, they serve a community that's half Black and then half white, and they want their portfolio to reflect that. So we've been
cool.
helping them move the needle and begin to reshape their portfolio. And that's just one example. So I feel good about what we've done. And we also have something, I've chaired the CFA Boston Society last year. And one thing that the CFA Institute rolled out, and I know this isn't really a venture heavy community, but CFA Institute is pretty powerful. And they rolled out a DEI code where managers can and GPs can sign on to commit to make progress. It's pretty low hanging fruit. They meet you where you are. All you have to do is demonstrate progress from one year to the next. You don't need to have like a certain percentage. It just needs to get better. So I'm a big fan of that. And I sent out a note to all 2,000 of our GPs in our database and said, please sign on to this. And they saw 3 times increase in the number of signatories in about a month. So, there's a lot that we can do.
No, that's That's exciting to hear that among the CPA community as well as the community foundations, momentum exists, because it does feel like the air has gone out of the room a little bit. But there's these pockets of movement.
That's right.
Can you tell us a little bit about braving our savings so that people can purchase for their Christmas stocking stuffers?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for asking about it. So, I mentioned that the real game changers for me were role models in education. And the purpose of writing this book was to really perpetuate that and scale that. I think about braving our savings and the movement around it, which I call 30 seconds of bravery. 30 seconds of bravery is the idea that if you do something that's scary, if we all did for just 30 seconds, it will absolutely change your life. And it's happened for me about 6 times that I can think of. Really, really scary things. Totally altered the trajectory of my life. And I think about this little idea of mine as like a bit of an entrepreneurial venture, like a nonprofit entrepreneurial venture. So created this from scratch, wrote the book, got it published. And the book has had a lot of strong support and endorsements from the investment community and nonprofits and pro sports players like Alex Rodriguez and some Patriots players. So we've given away a bunch of copies. It's also for sale on Amazon. And there are a few underlying messages that the power of capital is tremendous, which we talked about, that role models in education are super powerful and can be lead to a step function change in one's livelihood and ability to take care of themselves. I don't get to keep what I have unless I give it away. So giving it away to underserved communities, and then it's amplified by others in the industry as well. So the focus is bravery. It's a story of my girls. It's actually a true story. I taught them how to invest last year. I'm divorced. I've been divorced 5 years. And I sort of said to myself, if these girls can't stand on their own 2 feet, I haven't done my job properly. And they were 6 and 9 when we did it. So they're the main characters. And it's in a sneaky way written for parents as well, with some technical stuff that matter about how to invest.
What's a good age group if grandfathers are listening, or who's the right audience? Yeah.
I think anyone from 4 to 10 or 11 is the right age group.
Okay. That's I have an idea for my son now. Thank you. So Sarah, it's been wonderful having you on. Do you have any parting thoughts for, emerging allocators or emerging managers out there?
Absolutely. Okay. So we'll start with, for GPs out there. We ask, you'll go pretty far if you keep these things in mind, to be honest about challenges in your portfolio. So we don't want any surprises. Ask LPs how they make decisions and timelines, and remember that we have governing bodies behind us. And oftentimes the person you speak with may not be the ultimate decision maker. Be flexible with your pitch and ask questions and be curious about the LP you're speaking with, because that purpose of capital might really be a great connection point. And, for LPs, be as transparent as you can with GPs. A quick no is much more valuable than a long no. And work on that investment philosophy and edge in articulating it. That goes for both of them.
Thank you. I just feel like I could have we definitely are going to have a part 2 at some point. But you've been awesome. Thanks, Sarah, for being on the pod.
Thank you very much.
Much thanks. See you later, allocator.
After Portfolio Tile, investing with a smile.